Everyone wants to be stronger, not just physically, but in every part of life. But between confusing workout advice, complicated equipment, and trying to figure out nutrition, where does anyone even start? Well, to get stronger mentally and physically, go to Anytime Fitness. You'll get a personalized training, nutrition, and recovery plan, all customized to your body, your strength level, and your goals. You'll get expert coaching to optimize your results, anytime, anywhere, in the gym and on the Anytime Fitness app. And you'll get anytime access to 5,500 gyms worldwide, all with the right equipment to level up your strength gains and your life. So get started at AnytimeFitness.com. That's AnytimeFitness.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
Nice. When did you get back from Germany?
I got back late Monday night, and then we left yesterday for Detroit. So quick turnaround.
Anytime I think about how much I travel, I just remind myself that it's not as much as you.
I mean, you're on the road so much though too, man. Like, it's nuts.
Sup, nerds? It's basketball. Welcome to Horse, a basketball podcast about everything except for the wins and losses. My name is Mike Schubert, and I'm joined by my trusted co-host, the angry Luka/Mavs fan, having a conversation with the owner of the Mavericks, to the Mavericks finally firing Nico Harrison. It's Adam Mamawala. Adam, how's it going?
It appears that the process has not been trusted in Dallas.
No, the vision has not been seen, I believe, is what Nico was telling people. That you got to see the vision, which is you make one of the worst trades in the history of sports, and then you're so bad that you get just enough percentage chance of the lottery to win the lottery. And with that 1.8% chance, you get a generational talent. The vision.
Well, I think interestingly, though, it kind of then gets rid of the conspiracy theory idea that like this was all directed by ownership and they made Nico do this thing so that the fans would get angry and they could move the team to Las Vegas and blah, 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 blah. Like, I think this now is more of an indication that he was going rogue and taking an incredibly large swing, early baseball reference, and it did not pay off at all.
Could also be a cricket reference, right? Big swing.
Yeah, it could be a golf reference. It could be you could swing. It could be a sex party reference, and we don't judge our listeners. You can swing as much as you wish.
We won't have a sound effect for that one.
No,
maybe
let's
for
not,
the other sports, but we're not going to have a moan for that swinging. But yeah, I always thought that, I guess the conspiracy theory that this was all rigged, like the draft being rigged, I think is silly. The conspiracy theory that this was an ownership thing, yeah, it was like this trade was just so bad that we all wanted to believe that something had to be afoot. But given the way that the owner of the Mavericks, Patrick Dumont, has talked about it, because now he's like, trying to do a good PR spin, and he's basically just telling a lot of people now, I regret it. This was bad. To his credit, he is not trying to 100% avoid any of the blame. Like, obviously, Nico is the one to blame, and he's not shying away from that. But he's also recognizing, I still have ultimate say, and I was persuaded, and it was a goof on my end, and now I'm trying to do right by the fans. So as good as you can do, given this horrendous situation, I think he's doing the right thing. I also think part of the Nico Harrison firing is that the Mavericks are off to such a bad start.
Right.
They're just so bad. And it's not even just the Luka trade, but they traded away Quentin Grimes for basically nothing, and he's playing quite well in Philadelphia. And this whole offseason, they didn't prepare in case any of their guards got hurt, and now they have no guards, and you need guards. They just have a bunch of power forwards, and now Cooper Flagg's playing out of position.
Yeah. In fairness, Kyrie Irving is still out, right? So it's like they're not playing at 100%.
But they knew he was going to be out.
Right.
I think what really was the final straw that broke the camel's back was that this offseason, like they knew Kyrie was going to be hurt. Like they had a whole offseason to try and build a roster that could at least sustain until he came back. And it just reeks of someone who forgot to do the homework. Like it's just really bad.
But what was, before we get into the Teal Memorial locker room, where we're already frankly late to be there, but
it's all good. We got to talk about this.
What was the clip of someone filming from behind Mark Cuban where he like turns around and says to someone in the crowd, like, sit the fuck down, sit the fuck. Like, have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen this. Is this in regards to a Nico Harrison thing?
I think so, because I saw a tweet that was like, this is where it all started. And then it was someone filming from maybe like 5 rows behind Cuban at a Mavs game. And I guess the fans were yelling something and he stands up and turns around and you can clearly read his lips saying like, sit the F down 4 times. I don't really know the context, so we'll need to look into that.
I've pulled up a video. It says it's from 9 months ago. So it's got to be shortly after the Nico trade.
Maybe that's where they're saying it all began, even though Mark Cuban is not even the owner anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Cuban's just in a weird spot. He's so strange. It's just so weird.
Yeah. I mean, I think with all the Clippers stuff and the way he was carrying water for other billionaire owners, he already doesn't look great right now, so.
Yeah. And with him, like, he's got this weird thing where he's no longer majority owner of the Mavericks, but he's still a minority owner of the Mavericks, and he's like wants them to do well, but also doesn't want to take blame, but also wants to blame other people. I don't know.
Right.
Dude sucks. But you know who doesn't suck? Us. Let's talk about basketball in the Teal Memorial locker room.
Yeah, let's do it.
A place that doesn't suck.
Not at all.
And you know who else doesn't suck?
Certainly not our patrons, and especially not our newest patron. Who do we have, Mr. Schubert?
We got Derry Bird.
I know,
who I can
great?
only assume is related to Larry, Larry's sibling Derry, or Sue's mom.
All right, so the origin story for Derry Bird is as follows. Derry Bird says, hi, have been a listener for quite a while. Found this through Mike's Potterless podcast, which I've listened to 4 times now, and listened to the first 5 books of The Newest Olympian, as I didn't read those growing up, so read along with the podcast. Played basketball in college, so this podcast is really enjoyable to listen to. Thanks for making basketball topics fun, as well as promoting the WNBA, especially before it was gaining followers. As you can guess from my name, I'm a Bucks fan, which interestingly, I wouldn't have picked up on that, the Derry part. Obviously.
Oh, Derry.
I'm a Bucks fan and hoping they can hang on this year. Though unfortunately I live near Philly. Always enjoy you hating on Sixers fans. Haha. Anyway, just wanted to thank you both for making enjoyable content that I've been able to listen to over the years and wanted to make sure I contributed back to you. Thanks again. You're most welcome. And thank you, Derry Bird. I'm very much enjoying this being the final patron name that we get to read out on our list of patrons, which is as follows. Who do we have for producer level patrons?
Oh, we've got a whole wonderful group. We've got Polly Burge, we've got Salvatore Testa, Siobhan Ellsbury, Dunko Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Reed, Steph Curry is up.
Wait.
Oh, no?
I'm going to do it in real time. Okay. Steph Curry got his brother Seth cut from the Warriors.
Okay, wait, but
allegedly.
Has there been new reporting? Because where it currently stood, it was like a weird contractual thing.
Yeah, basically the narrative was like, also bang, but the narrative was that Steph is so cutthroat and like obviously wants this next ring so much that he was like, I don't care if you're my own flesh and blood. If you're not giving it what we need from you, I will go to the front office and say like, get rid of you. But I think this may have not been a completely accurate report. I just saw some rumblings that Steph went to the front office and was like, yeah, Seth's not bringing it. Like we got to get him out of here.
I do not think that's true. My understanding of the situation is that they have like a very particular dollar amount that they can hit before they get to the apron. And it's one of those weird things of like, if they signed him starting, I think yesterday at the time of recording, so recording this November 12th, I think if they bring him on because of a certain like it's a percentage into the season, they'll be like $12 underneath the tax line. So
yeah.
My understanding from the reporting I saw was that they were just going to bring him onto the roster later, but there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee, especially because the Warriors are in an interesting spot where they started off really well and then they cooled off a little bit. So, I don't know.
And it could also be rationale if you want to be a conspiracy theorist for saying like, hey, we can say that it's for this reason, but really we all know that it's because he's not playing well or practicing hard or whatever. But if you do need an apron, make sure to pick up Aisha Curry's cookbook, available at all bookstores nationwide.
Oh boy, what's it called?
I don't know. Probably something silly.
Not in my backyard. Yes, in my kitchen. The Aisha Curry
that's
cookbook.
pretty good.
Chase Underulo, Naked Rachel, Sidney Crosby as a vampire, Chelsea's cousin, Ginger Spurs boy, Balls to the Walls, Mott's Furley, Utah Jash, and now Derry Bird. I wonder if people will ask. My favorite thing is if you search into Google, is Sue Bird, one of the autocorrects is Larry Bird's daughter. And it's super funny. I just always makes me laugh that people think that they have to be related. They look nothing alike at all.
No. But they're both white, and their last name is Bird, so that's enough for some people.
That's enough. And you know what's more than enough for us?
The amount of tabs that I have, but also having sponsors, in this case, Tab for a Cause.
Yep. So Tab for a Cause is a great little company. You go to tabforacause.org/horse. You install it in your browser in just a couple of clicks. And then every time you open a tab, you'll see a pretty picture of some sort of background, nature or architecture. And then you might see some ads in the corner, but those ads raise money for charity. And you can decide what charities they support. Now, they've been our sponsor for a while. I'll give a little pro tip here. If you use a browser and you have an ad blocker in there, you never see the ads. So I've never seen ads from Tab for a Cause, but it still seems to like register. I don't know if I'm helping or not for the charity stuff.
That's a good pro tip if it works.
But like, if the absolute deal breaker is that you don't want to see ads, it might still work. I still get the hearts. I still pick the charities. I'm not sure. But you can go to tabforacause.org/horse and you can, raise money for charity, hopefully, every single time you open a tab. We'll do a tab check. I actually have a ton comparatively for me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10.
I was going to get on your case if anything you said was under double digits, but you got right to the threshold, at which I think that's not a wild statement for you to make. I am doubling you. I'm at 20 right now, which, I would say for you a little higher than usual. For me, sadly, a little bit lower. I think 20 is not as bad as it's been in other cases. But
oh, man. Well, now that we have done that, unless you're listening on Patreon where you get access to episodes without inserted ads, it's time for some inserted ads. But if you're listening on Patreon, we're just going to get right to it.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews all on the app. Download Thumbtack today.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Adam, what do you got going on?
All right, couple new things to update everybody about. I do have a shout out, and I made a note of this because this is my resolution, writing down people's names so I remember who to personally thank. So from the show in Toronto, I want to thank Gwyneth, who very nicely came to my show at the Comedy Bar in Toronto, came up and introduced herself after the show. I got to meet Gwyneth and the person that she came with. So Gwyneth, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it, and I promised you that I would remember your name, and I have. So nice job, me. But other stuff coming up. Not a lot else going on this year, but I have my big headlining show in New York City. That is going to be on Thursday, December 11th at Westside Comedy Club on the Upper West Side. Then that Saturday, the 13th, I will be in Las Vegas with Dane Cook for possibly one final big show. It looks like he's not touring next year. So that will be at the Venetian on December 13th. And then we're already into 2026. So on January 8th, which is a Thursday, I will be headlining the Comedy Fort in Fort Collins, Colorado. That Friday and Saturday, I will be at the Denver Comedy Lounge. And then I have kind of a gap there, still working on something for England, London, England, to be more specific.
Cheerio.
Hopefully the week of the 12th of January, probably January 14th. So keep an ear out for that. And then I've got the Tampa Funny Bone. That's a new one. That's Tampa, Florida on Thursday, February 5th. I've got some stuff in April. So April is Zanies in Chicago. That is Tuesday the 21st. Then we've got Mic Drop in Chandler, Arizona. That's the Phoenix area on Saturday the 25th of April. I'm working on something in San Diego for the 26th, which is not announced yet. And then Friday, May 1st, I will be at the City Winery Loft in Boston. That's what I've got. What about you?
Cool beans. I have, by the time this episode is out, the tickets for the Australia leg of my Australia-New Zealand tour in 2026 will be live. The LA tickets are up for sure right now. So that's going to be Los Angeles, December 2nd at 8 p.m. in Santa Monica at a comedy club called The Crow, which you helped me secure years ago.
Sweet.
And then the Australia stuff is going to be Sydney on January 3rd. And then Perth on January 10th, and then Melbourne on January 17th, and then Brisbane on January 24th. The Sydney show and the Brisbane show are at 7 p.m. The Perth show is at 2:30 p.m. and the Melbourne show is at 5 p.m. So you can get tickets to all of those at thenewsolympian.com/live. Should be a fun time. And then I am now currently in the spot where I'm trying to figure out the New Zealand things, but I wanted to get all of Australia squared away, and it is squared away, and now I'm going to figure out that. I'm also working on some things for March. There's going to be a mid-March show in Vienna, Virginia. It was scheduled for the 15th, but they might have to move it, but I hope not. And then in April, I should be doing something where I'll be coming to Denver and Berkeley, and then maybe some other cities that don't get as much love. I'm going to see if I can come to places like Boise or Oklahoma City or Sacramento, things in the ballpark of those two. But Denver and Berkeley are the two like for sures, and then I'm going to try to add things around it.
Great. Love it.
Yeah. So there's no NB Q&A this episode because we have a packed episode with a very fun interview. But before we get into the interview with Adam Amin, let's talk with Adam Mamawala about Full Court Press. Get it like the news.
I do.
Well, there is some news. Obviously, the Nico Harrison stuff is the most recent and the biggest, I would say, but we kind of covered all of that in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We'll see what goes on with the Mavs and with Nico Harrison, who did... Gotta hand it to him. He updated his Instagram bio to say unemployed, which is pretty funny. Gotta hand it to him.
That is funny.
There.
But are you ready for this transition?
Ooh.
From Nico Harrison to someone whose hair is on other people's bodies. Let's talk about Jaylen Brown.
Let's talk about Jaylen Brown. He is... I don't understand how this is happening. I don't know how this happens more than one time. But he clearly seems to be thinning in the hair department. There's people on the online who have different theories. Mm-hmm. Some people are saying he's just thinning, and because he has kind of like a buzz cut, you can kind of see, kind of like Kevin Durant, you can see it kind of like speckled throughout his hair. So some people are like, oh, he's just trying to make it not look as bad. Other people think he's like full up, straight up balding. And then other people are saying that he has thin hair because he had braids for so long and they were really tight braids. So maybe his hair follicles are feeling a lot of stress.
Sure.
So many different theories about it, but all that matters is that he's using some sort of polish or hair thickening, like not as bad as the Carlos Boozer situation, but something in that ballpark where there's some sort of black material, I don't know if it's a powder or a paste or whatever it is, to make his hair look fuller. Mm-hmm. And it first happened against my beloved New York Knicks, where he kind of put his head down on a drive and ran into, I think, OG Anunoby, and the Knicks were wearing their white jerseys, and you just see like a black circle on the jersey. And then it's happened two more times.
The funniest part of this would be if it were used as proof of like, he committed an offensive foul. Look, there's the proof right here on my jersey.
Oh, like when it's to make a tennis reference, like when they point to the clay court at the French Open and they're like, no, that's where the ball landed. Look.
Or more directly, to make a baseball reference, in the 1969 World Series, there was a famous incident called the shoe shine play, where a guy in the Mets claimed that he had been hit by the pitch, and then use the ball to show like, hey, there's shoe shine on it from my shoes, and therefore I must have been hit by the pitch. But the controversy is like, did someone just like scuff up the ball? Because the umpire was like, well, I guess there's shoe shine, so go to first base.
Wow.
So who knows?
So,
But for the moment, he's getting clowned a lot. And I feel like he's kind of playing into it too, where there was a video of him being like calling LeBron. I don't know if he was actually calling LeBron or fake calling LeBron, but being like, hey, I need your your hairline doctor.
well, so he, after the first incident, went on some Twitch live stream thing and said he was going to live stream him getting his head shaved, but then it wasn't real, and it turned out to not actually be him getting his head shaved. This is when he made the LeBron comment about going to Turkey to get his hair done.
Yeah.
Someone commented that it was just a Hennessy ad, and I don't know if it actually was a Hennessy ad or if that was a joke with with LeBron's decision being a Hennessy ad, but whatever it was, I didn't watch it. I was not taking the time. I don't even like to watch the Celtics play basketball. I'm not going to want to watch the Celtics get their hair cut. So yeah, it's happened 3 times, which is ridiculous. The third time it happened, I don't know which broadcasters it was. It might have even been, I think it might have even been the Celtics ones, but it happened and they were like, Jaylen Brown has claimed his next victim. Like, everyone knows it's a thing. It's so weird. It's so weird that it happened more than one time. How are you not embarrassed into, I'd retire. Come on.
It just turns into a thing where all the teams the Celtics play insist on wearing their darkest jerseys so as to prevent this. Like, no one's allowed to wear a white jersey against the Celtics from now on.
Or they flip it, and like you're saying, they only will wear their light colored jerseys so that they can use this as a competitive advantage.
It's really funny.
It's very, very silly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, super duper goofy. Another thing more on the drama is that Ja Morant was suspended for 1 game for being pouty and grumpy in response to decisions made by the coaching staff. This coach of the Grizzlies came over from Europe. He was a very heralded EuroLeague coach. And there's an episode of the Zach Lowe Show where he had Chris Vernon on, and he's covered the Grizzlies for years and years, big Memphis guy. And he said that this guy's coaching style is basically, when you're talking about the off-the-court stuff, is just to be like incredibly direct, get to the point, don't like talk about people behind their back. Yes, it makes things uncomfortable in the instant, but then ideally in the long term, everyone's fully bought in. So we'll see if the Grizzlies get fully bought in, but basically they addressed something for Ja Morant. It appeared to be during halftime of a game because he came out in the second half and looked like a completely different, uninterested, unenthused, lackadaisical player. And then there were comments after the game where they asked him about it. He was like, oh, go talk to the coaching staff, They probably just don't want to play me, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's not playing super well, so that might be a factor. But yeah, he got suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. There hasn't been anything since. The Grizzlies are not great. My beloved New York Knicks just stomped them. But yeah, drama's always there.
And did you see the Brandon Ingram incident for which he got fined $25,000?
Where he spiked a water bottle? Yeah, describe it.
I forget what preceded it, but he was frustrated and was heading to the bench and took, I believe it was like a blue Gatorade bottle, and just absolutely slammed it into the ground. And then it ricocheted up from the ground and drilled, I believe, a Raptors staffer like right in the side of the face. So he was not suspended, but he was fined $25,000. And hopefully that staffer got a little something on the down low as well.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it'd be really cool if you don't sue me. So here is a year's supply of Gatorade, if it's not too triggering.
Blue Gatorade. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't hit too close to home.
Yes. But as is tradition, even though we don't talk much about the wins and losses, I guess let's do a quick vibe check on the Bulls and Knicks. I want to start by saying you're welcome, because since I went to see the Bulls play the Knicks, they have not lost a game. We're recording this on November 12th. I went to see the Bulls-Knicks game on, I think it was November 2nd, which was like a good game for 3 quarters, and then the Knicks pulled away. But the Knicks, I believe, as of this recording, 7-0 at home, 0-3 on the road.
Correct. So I think we should have all of our games at home. I think that's just the right thing to do. No, look, vibes are great. The offense is looking good. People are getting involved. We're playing the bench. We're doing this cool thing where at the end of each game in the locker room, they award one player defensive player of the game. And it's a play on like hard working. So they give them a hard hat and a high vis jacket and a pair of Timberlands with the laces tied together, and they wear it as a necklace, and then everyone takes a team photo. There's already been bits happening in the team photo where people try to like hide behind people's backs and just like poke their head out and stuff. So vibes seem really good, which is nice because they started off not so good, but the offense is humming. Things are looking good. We are second in the East. We just got ranked by Zach Lowe and Fred Katz. They did a podcast together where they said we are the They're number one ranked team in the East. Even though we don't have the number one record, they have the most hope for us. So that's very fun and very good. Your Bulls off to a hot start, cooled off since. So how are you feeling vibe-wise there?
The Bulls are in the middle of a really difficult stretch of games. I mean, they started off 6-1, so like they were 5-0. Then they played the Knicks. They lost that game. That was their first loss of the season, and then immediately followed that up with this wild comeback where they were down 24 points to 76ers, including down 22 with 5 minutes left to go in the third, came all the way back, won that game. They were also undefeated at home until recently. But now in the past few games, they lost to the Bucks, the Cavs, and the Spurs, which, all three of them are good teams. They actually played the Spurs without Josh Giddey, who's been terrific. He got crossed over so hard that it literally hurt his ankle.
Yeah, it was so bad that it looked fake. But
yes.
You talk about an ankle breaker, literal breaking of ankle.
But yeah, the Bulls got Wembiid, and 3 frustrating games because it was games that they were in up until the very end, and both with the Spurs and the Cavs, they were up, I think both 6 and then 5 respectively within the last 2 minutes of the game and lost. However, they're still 6-4. They're still in every game. They've not, knock on wood, maybe it'll happen tonight against Detroit as we record this, but they've been at the very least extremely competitive, which is a good sign. And all of this is without Kobe White, who's one of their better players. So for as long as the Bulls are above 500, I will continue to be happy with where they're at. Bulls are above 500, Bears are above 500. These things do not happen independently of each other or at the same time very often. So I'll take what I can get, but I guess we'll see where we are in 2 weeks.
Yeah. The only other thing it's related to the wins and losses, but it gets to the drama. We have to point out there are 3 teams that are 1-10, which is ridiculous. Now, all 3 of these teams were expected to be bad, so there's not necessarily drama there. That's the Nets, the Pacers, and the Wizards. But then there are some teams that are doing poorly off the start that does have drama, and I feel like we should address this as we are monitoring the drama draft.
Sure.
The Pelicans are 2-8, and they have traded away their draft pick next year unconditionally. So that's not what you want because that pick is a top 5 pick right now.
Hey, how are those vibes over there, Jordan Poole? So much better than Washington?
The 1-10 Wizards? Yeah, no, the vibes in Washington, they at least have an upward direction. The Pelicans, it's tough over there. Mavericks, obviously, we said really bad. They're 3-8. Kings, also 3-8. They are a team that, in theory, should be trying to make the playoffs given their roster. So that's bad. The Clippers, 3-7, same thing. Older team trying to make the playoffs. That's bad. And then on a little different level, you have the Orlando Magic starting off 5-6, which isn't as bad as these teams, but a lot of people predicted them to be the number 3 team in the East. So they've been off to a start. Desmond Bane has been very grumpy. He had a really bad, super obvious flagrant foul where not only did he kind of not clothesline, but really grab someone going for a layup, but then the ball got loose and he spiked the basketball in the dude's head to make it even more obvious that it should be a flagrant foul. Just as the kids say, he crashed out. So there are certainly right now some teams that are doing worse than they would have hoped, and it's not looking good. And then you have some other teams that are, doing a lot better than expected and vibes are good, but there's certainly some grumpiness and we'll see how the season goes. But this season could be one of the classic ones where there's just a really bad bunch of basketball teams at the bottom.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think it's worth mentioning that because it's the start of the season, everything is so magnified where even the best teams usually go through a stretch of 10 games somewhere in the season where they're 3-7 or 4-6. But if it happens halfway through the season, it doesn't stick out as much versus if you lose 8 of your first 10 games, everyone's like, oh my God, 2-8, the sky is falling. So I think to your point, some of these things are predictable, in the same way that it's not shocking that the Thunder have only lost 1 game. It's also not that shocking that the Nets have only won 1 game. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think certainly in the West, it's kind of shaping up how you would expect, where the Thunder are the presumptive favorites. Nuggets are very good. Spurs look very good. And they already appear to be in contention mode. And then in the East, it's also kind of what you would think. Pistons are a very good team. Knicks are a very good team. And then there's kind of a jumble of other teams that may or may not have a shot when it gets down to the nitty gritty.
Final thing before we go, they announced the format of the NBA All-Star Game, and it's chaotic and stupid.
Great.
It's the USA versus the world in a round-robin tournament where there will be 3 teams, 2 from the US and 1 from the not US, so an international team. But then there's all these weird stipulations of, depending on how the voting goes, if it's not the right numbers, where you have 16 Americans and 8 international people, the commissioner will have to like go in and make selections. But here's my question. What if there's more than 8 international people deserving? Like, I don't know. It's weird. There's a lot of very, very good international players. I think it's weird. The round robin tournament's weird, where there's like multiple games and then the top 2 teams face off in a final. It's just so needlessly complex, where you can just go back to East versus West and then put in the Elam ending, which will make it a dramatic fourth quarter. And it's right there. But we're doing all this complicated stuff.
Yeah, we're just overthinking it. And at this point, I think I've been pretty stubborn about continuing to watch it, even though it's a bad product. I think I may have to preemptively be like, unless I truly have nothing else going on in my life, I'm not going to make time for that. I'll watch the highlights on YouTube in a 12-minute condensed version. Like, it's not worth it.
Nah, not looking good. Not looking good. What is looking good? The Knicks City Edition court, really good. And the City Edition jerseys drops. That'll be a future episode. I think we should do jerseys and courts, because the Knicks court is at least super fresh. We've now seen the NBA Cup court. Some of them are wild. The Timberwolves one is so green it was reflecting on people's faces.
Yeah, you can never really tell until you see people playing on it, like what it actually looks like. But yeah, you had the glowing face effect.
This is weird. It's super weird. All right. We have covered a whole lot of stuff, but we've got a very fun interview coming up. Adam, how about you tee it up for us?
Yeah, so I've been a fan of this guy for a while, and I'll mention that when we intro him, but his name is Amin, and if you're a sports or basketball fan, you've probably already heard of him, but he is the primary Bulls play-by-play announcer, but he's doing very well, so he's now kind of moving up the ranks. He's calling playoff games on Fox for Major League Baseball. He's calling NFL games every week, so he's rapidly becoming, in my view, like one of the top broadcasters in sports right now. Super versatile guy, and like, as you'll hear in the interview, just exceedingly kind, gracious dude. Like, we DM'd each other. He was like a fan of my comedy. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of his broadcasting, because I was like, I can't DM you unless you follow me. And then just organically, he happened to follow me. And I was like, yes, I finally get to talk to Adam Amin. But so here that is. I think you folks will enjoy it quite a bit. And we do have video from it as well, so we may put that up on the YouTube page at some point.
Yeah.
All right. As alluded to, we have a very special guest on the podcast today. I am extremely excited to have this dude joining us. I first became aware of him as the play-by-play announcer for the Chicago Bulls, my beloved Chicago Bulls. But if you are a sports fan, you probably know who he is. The guy's been calling NFL games. He's calling MLB playoff games, calling almost really any sport that exists. A Bob Costas in the making. Adam Amin joins the podcast. Adam, how you doing, man?
Oh, this is awesome, Adam. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Of course. You seem more well-rested than I would imagine you would be, given the international travel. You're like, honestly, if I'm going to be completely transparent, the only thing that makes me sad about your incredible success is that you're calling fewer Bulls games. I'm just going to put it out there.
We're getting ready for one tonight, thankfully, in Detroit. So, but yeah, it's a weird stretch with some of the international travel, with just weekends doing NFL games. You know, that's typically been my kind of rotation over the course of the last several years of doing, Fox NFL games and then doing the Bulls, where they're kind enough to, let me go on the weekends and let me go on, Saturdays and Sundays to go off and do NFL games. But just the way the international travel has worked, the way that the Bulls travel has kind of worked out, like I'm missing something like 9 out of 11 games. So it's unfortunate that like I don't get to see them, especially because they've gotten off to such a great start. But we're in Detroit tonight, the day we're recording this. So at least we get a chance to call them tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one tonight. I think Detroit's going to probably want some revenge from that opening night game. But hey, we'll see how it goes. But I get usually where we start is just finding out. Obviously, there's a basketball podcast. Like, where does your relationship with basketball start in terms of watching it, playing it? Like, how does that begin for you?
Yeah, I mean, much like you, this is the team that I grew up rooting for, right? This is my beloved team as well. I was born in suburban Chicago in late 1986, so right when the Bulls were starting to come to the forefront of basketball, I think popularity, basketball culture. Obviously, what Michael Jordan was doing, he was already a couple of years into his career at that point, and the ascent that they were on at that point, I kind of was born at like the perfect time when it comes to being a basketball fan, especially if you're in Chicago, because the success was starting to come around. And I was
sitting here wearing my 1992.
I saw the shade of it right there. I was like, that looks familiar. Yeah. So I was right there when they started to win championships. It's coincidence now that I work with one of the guys who was part of those first 3 championship teams, and Stacey King, who's a backup big on those teams and a major contributor at times. So the fact that we get to work together now is a pretty big deal for me. But I came around like a lot of kids, not just in Chicago, but around the country and frankly around the world, did when the Bulls and Michael Jordan in particular started to find success, and was there when, he went to go play baseball for a little while. And then when he came back, obviously there was a lot of buzz around the city and around the sport. So I saw, great things. I saw greatness from a young age when it came to the game of basketball. And obviously I fell in love with it like a lot of people did. And then as I got older, I played not well. I'm not a tall man by any means either. So, maxing out at 5'5", 5'6" is not really conducive, outside of a handful of players that have made it to the NBA at a high level. But I knew I wanted to be a broadcaster. When I knew I wanted to broadcast games, I went to a college basketball school at Valparaiso University. So basketball was the sport in the state of Indiana, and certainly still is. And I was exposed to college basketball at that point and fell in love with broadcasting it. So it's been the sport I've called the most of in my life and in my career. And it's the sport I have a great affection for because of growing up in Chicago during the 1990s.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like one of the things I wanted to ask you the most, and one of the reasons I reached out to you and I admire you, is like there are a lot of parallels in like our lives. Obviously, I'm in a completely different field, but like, well, our name is Adam. That's a good starting off point. But like, born in the Chicago area around the same time. You're Pakistani, I believe, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so like my dad is Indian, like very similar story of like when he came to the States, why he came to the States, and then growing up and going into a profession that I would say is like outside of the norm of what a lot of, in general, like Asian parents expect of their kids. And people, I tell people the story of like coming out as a comedian to my parents. Like, what was that like for you when you realized like, hey, this is what I actually want to do with my life? Was there a conversation around that with your parents? Was there something else that they like wanted you to do? How did that all go?
I would say first and foremost, my parents were way more liberal than I think a lot of South Asian parents in particular. And I don't necessarily mean that politically. I just mean that with what they allowed us to do. Sure. I have 3 older brothers who are between 9 and 17 years older than me. They were all born in Pakistan. My father had immigrated to the United States in the late 1970s. The rest of the family came over in the mid 1980s, and then I was born not long after that in the United States. So my brothers had already kind of had a taste of American life. That's part of the reason my name is what it is. My brothers have very traditional Pakistani and Muslim names, and my
sister's name is Shaheen, and I'm Adam.
That's
my parents call me Adam, but it's
of
like,
course, same here, right? But like my mom wanted to name me after my late father. She wanted to name me Muhammad. And my brothers, who had been going to school in the U.S. for about a year, and I don't know what the transition, 40 years later of xenophobia is in schools in America, but at the time it felt very, very heavy for those 3. Sure. So they automatically were like, let's not do that to him. Let's please give him a name that's a little bit easier to digest, perhaps, for the American students that we were going to be around. So I think even from there, getting the name that I got was an interesting kind of pivot right out of the gate. So I grew up with this Americanized name. I grew up in American culture. I had a deep appreciation for Islam and for Pakistani culture and for South Asian culture. And certainly, the thing that still connects me the most is the food. Of course, like my mom still cooks, and I still eat the food with this great, warmth in my heart for it. But I was very Americanized, and I think my brothers were too in a lot of ways. And I think because of that, my parents, and there are a lot of South Asian parents, I imagine, who are probably in similar circumstances, who probably would have said, like, no, you can't do this. You can't enjoy sports. You can't be a part of the arts. You can't explore some of the things outside of academia. And I was a good student. I was a very good student. So I think I held up my end of the bargain in that sense. But I do feel like there was still this desire to do something different. I don't know where that necessarily came from, but when it hit me that performing was something I enjoyed, sports were something I enjoyed, I really kind of dedicated my mind to a lot of those things, and my body certainly too. I played sports throughout my entire childhood, and when I realized I couldn't do that anymore, this natural kind of shift towards theatrical performance combined with sports. I played the guitar, I DJ'd, I was a violin player, I sang in the choir, I was in musical theater, I was an actor. I did all this performance stuff and I was very good at it, and I loved sports. So when I went to college, the sports broadcasting thing kind of was a natural pivot. And when I told my parents that this was something that I really wanted to do and I was good at it and I wanted to pursue it, my mom was skeptical, but she wasn't like, she didn't shun the idea. And my father basically just said, if you're happy doing it and you're good at doing it, like, don't half-ass it, was basically his whole thing. He was a very hardworking man. He was a manual labor guy in Chicago after being a white-collar worker, I should say. And in Pakistan, he was the vice president of a bank in Karachi. So then coming to the States and becoming a manual laborer, I imagine there's a lot of similar stories around, and fathers who said, I worked too hard for you to go
1,000%.
Burn a career on a whim, and I think, to his credit and to my mom's credit too, they were both much more open to it than I think other South Asian parents, other Muslim parents, other parents of a lot of different stripes probably would have been.
It's so funny because that story that you just told is so similar to so many that I've heard, which is like, when you grow up first generation and like, both of our dads or parents, like from a certain time period of like coming to the States, the exact same thing was what I heard from my dad, which is like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you that whatever you choose to do with your life, you better work incredibly hard at it.
Yeah.
Because all of this was for you guys, for you and your sister. So like, make it worth it.
Yeah, that was a major part of it. And listen, there were moments where my mom was still very skeptical. She was still very much in question of what I was doing. And I remember I took a job after college in a very small town in northwest Iowa. It's a town of about 3,000 people. So, going from a suburb where there were 30,000 people, which is part of a city where there are 3 million people, I went to a town of 3,000. So all of a sudden it's a big culture shock. And I remember coming home during a little break that I had, and my father was ill, and he was supposed to take my mom to a wedding. And my mom asked me, well, your dad was supposed to take me. Can you take me to this wedding? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. It'll be good to see, good to hang with you and good to see some friends of mine and all that. And before we walked into this banquet hall, my mom stopped me and said, I told everybody you're in med school, so make sure you tell everybody that you're in med school. And this is seconds before we're walking into a room full of people that several of whom I know. Several of these are aunties. Like, they were they knew me as a child, and they knew that I was a good student, and they knew all this stuff. So I'm having to lie to women who have known me since I was in diapers. And of course, when I said I was in med school, to lean into the stereotype a little bit, I told for the sake of my mother, I lied to all of her friends. And sure enough, by the end of the night, 3 of her friends had gone, by the way, my daughter is single and she is of marrying age in some capacity, not necessarily verbatim, but in some form or fashion said, you're going to be a doctor. So, and so it was a very much lean into the stereotype moment. And I was very uncomfortable. And I always laugh at that moment now. Yeah. While I was upset about it in the moment, I laugh about it now, especially a couple of years later, when I made my national television debut, and my mom could not stop bragging to her friends that, oh, no, that's what he wants to do. This is what he was going to do all along anyway. Med school didn't work out.
Yeah, something tells me that those blind date offers might not have been there if they knew you were a broadcaster in northern Iowa.
Those fools, though. Now they could get free Bulls tickets. Come on.
I know. They really fumbled the bag on that one.
Exactly.
Unlimited popcorn from Benny. It's not theirs anymore. Well, Mike, I'll let you jump in. I've been dominating the questions here.
Sure. I mean, my questions stem more from like the actual broadcasting work itself, which I think it seems like something that is just so difficult, so challenging, especially every year you have to know every single person on every single team. Do you do particular prep work? Like, is it flashcards? Like, what do you do so that you know the 12th man on the Brooklyn Nets?
You know what? It's funny that you mention it, and I'll give you an explanation about the other the first part of the question. But this is the type of stuff that I work on almost daily, whether it's football, during the baseball season, and then certainly during basketball season. So the Bulls are playing the Pistons tonight, and I've actually transitioned over to using a tablet now. But like, this is the type of stuff that I put together, every game. So that's what I call what broadcasters call our spotting charts or spotting boards. So, I have all this information. I have personal information and personal anecdotes and stories, some statistical information that I write in. And, every game I'm doing this for a basketball game. I don't have to do it obviously for the Bulls because I cover most of their games. So I don't have to go as deep diving into them. But, the Pistons are an opponent that the Bulls will see 4 times a year because they're in the same division. That's a team that you need to stay up on and stay fresh on. And they're a really good team this year and have been for the last year plus after, some major years of futility. So it's my job. It's Stacey King's job. It's our production crew's job to tell that story as well to our viewing audience, which is comprised mostly of Bulls fans, so that they're informed on it and they have a context as to why beating this team would be a major accomplishment for this particular group. Or if you're playing a team that's not as good, why this team should be able to beat their opponent that night. So just being able to give context for a lot of this stuff is really important. Football preparation is very intensive because there are 100+ players. It's the most popular American sport. So most fans are, at least on the surface, aware of a lot of the storylines and things that are taking place. So you need to be more informed than they are, and you need to be able to give them something new. And I think Bob Costas, you that was very kind of you to make any type of comparison to Bob, because he's one of the greatest to do this. But Bob said it's very easy to do play-by-play adequately. I think it's a fairly easy job to be able to identify a person based off the number they're wearing or a physical attribute that they may have, to quickly and properly identify them and to be able to say what they're doing on the floor or on the court or on the field. Those are relatively easy things to do. It is difficult, where it gets difficult and where the greatest of this particular profession shine and thrive, is how you contextualize the things that are taking place in front of you, so that any fan, from the casual to the hardcore fan, can understand or at least appreciate what is taking place. The manner and style that you use to tell the story of what's happening in that game, because things like voice inflection and phrases and vocabulary to keep things fresh, those are things that affect how a fan psychologically and physiologically absorbs the information that you're giving them, along if they're watching on television or maybe they're just listening on the radio. So your job might be to describe what's happening rather than just caption what's happening. And then to be able to do it in a way that is palatable and comfortable, along with being informative and entertaining and perhaps even exciting if the game calls for it, that's where it gets difficult. And those are the things that I take a lot of pride in, and those are the things I put the most work into, because that's what I want to be able to do. And a lot of that comes with time and reps. And Adam, I have such a love and appreciation for stand-up comedy. It's something that I latched onto at a very young age, probably 8 or 9 years old, watching between SNL and then Showtime at the Apollo and then Lounge Lizards and Comedy Central Presents and absorbing stand-up comedy to this day. Myself and my girlfriend were both nerds for it. So I always loved the craft of it. And I imagine a lot of the things that I'm saying about my craft are very similar to what it is for a stand-up comic who's trying to do things in their own voice, but probably crib noted from some of the greats when they first started doing this. And,
I think the big parallel between stand-up and broadcasting is like, when you start out, it's a little more linear in terms of like, all right, this is my mission, this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm not going to diverge from that. But the more hours you have, the more reps you have, the more you just start to have a feel for the room that you're in. And I think one thing that you do very, very well is like, you have a really, really good feel for the game and the emotions of the game. And you're not going to ignore something that's like an emotional moment just so you can stay on course to talk about like the X's and O's. And I think that's something that's a really kind of remarkable trait, because to your point, like at a certain level, if you're at the point where you're calling professional games, like everybody's really good at play-by-play, right? Yeah. But the people who go a step beyond good and get to great, which is I think honestly where you are, and I'm sure it's just going to keep like improving from there, is just like understanding the moment. And it's an ongoing joke that I always shoehorn in a baseball reference on this basketball podcast, but like your calling of that 15-inning decisive game 5 of the Tigers and Mariners, like that is such a quintessential example of like, yes, you're calling what's happening on the field, but you're also building for us as the audience, like what is at stake here, why this is so important, how long it's been for both of these teams since they've gotten to this point. And I think that like that really speaks to not only your preparation, but just like being present in the moment.
Yeah, Mike, and that speaks to like where the preparation and why the preparation is such a crucial part of it, because to be able to make certain calls with a certain level of emotion or with a certain level of excitement or with a certain level of, and I think the word's great, a certain level of empathy for a fan base that may be watching their team struggle or suffer or have success and then attempt to sustain it or surpass it. I think through preparation of the history of the teams, the history of the players, the background of the contestants that are part of that, what has taken place prior in that series. So I think those are the things that really elevate the broadcast, and that's why we prepare as hard as we do. And again, at the end of the day, we're still trying to just document what's happening in front of us. The game is the most important thing, but to be able to add that context and emotion and to have this background in your head, not necessarily even to say everything that you've learned or say everything that might be pertinent from a background perspective to what's taking place on the field, you're able to add a layer of depth and emotion that may not have been there had you not known that Kerry Carpenter hit the home run in game 1 to give Detroit the lead, and then he comes back in game 5 in the same stadium with the season on the line and does the same thing. Like there's connectivity, and you're trying to connect these little dots that may not be staring you in the face. They might be hidden under a layer or two of information or context. You're trying to connect those dots. And I think that's something that's super hard, like to really know all of the points that you may be able to latch onto. And no broadcaster, I think, will ever have every piece of information. And even if they did, you can't jam all that in for the sake of just getting it out. Like you still want the process and the experience for a fan who's either watching or listening or both to be easily, digestible. So balancing those things is also part of the job as well.
Yeah, totally. And I wanted to add as well, for anyone who's not already, do make sure to follow Adam on Instagram, not only because you're a good follow in general, and also you can see some of your DJing sets, but we'll get to that later. But I love that in your stories, when you call a game, you show the prep work, like you show your scorecard for that game, whatever it is. And I think the kind of connection between all three of us, like Mike's a professional podcaster, I'm a professional comedian, you're a professional broadcaster. I have no doubt that in your life you have encountered people who are like, oh, so you just kind of like sit around all day and then you go work at night and make a bunch of money. It's like, if you had you're listening to and seeing the sexy part.
Yeah.
All of the other stuff during all of the other hours of the day is what makes me ready to do the part that you get to see. And I think there must be a lot of that. I'm sure people now understand the work that goes into it, but I have no doubt you've encountered that at certain times.
It's tedious. This stuff is tedious.
Incredibly,
researching, and I'm sure for you sitting down and trying to hammer out a joke, or especially on days where like your brain isn't cooperating the way you want it to, or if I'm on, my 5th game in 8 days and I'm in my 4th different city for it, and I'm sitting at my desk at 2:00 in the morning because I still have another game to prep for. I'm trying to get ahead of certain things, and my brain's not, the synapses aren't firing the way I want them to.
Sure.
I still have to be able to go through this whole process, this whole checklist of information, so that I don't shortchange the thing that I'm about to prepare for. Like, I don't want to shortchange a broadcast. And yeah, I've had a lot of sleepless nights, and I've had a lot of days where it's mind numbing to sit there in front of a laptop or in front of a packet of newspaper clippings and just read and highlight, or try to read this and say, oh, that might be important. Let me write this down here. And then you're slowly kind of lumbering through it. Now, listen, is it rocket science? No. Is it coal mining? Of course not. This is not extensive manual labor, and I try to keep that in mind the way my father had to do. Like that, like this is not the same thing. I understand that, but whatever your job is, whatever your profession is, whatever your career is, whatever hopefully your calling is, like, you want to dedicate everything you have to it. And that means that some nights, some days, you have to do the tedious stuff really, really well, and you have to be dedicated to doing the tedious stuff. So when you're in a position like we are, where we do enjoy what we do, like I'm thoroughly like ecstatic that this is my livelihood, this is the job, this is the career that I got to do and I got to pursue. That's the fun part at night, but it only comes with comfort if you've done all the work prior. And until you get to that point, until I get to that point, and I imagine you're the same, I just will not feel fully comfortable walking into a situation where I haven't done the work to get to that level where I have this contextualized information.
No, and it speaks to your professionalism that you're not letting yourself get complacent. And also the thing about being a broadcaster is like, whatever you're calling is the most important thing to the people who are choosing to watch it. Like, I couldn't care less about the Atlanta Falcons, but everybody watching that game on Sunday really cared about that team. So you have a responsibility to those people to make sure that you know their team and know the team that they're playing.
Very much so. And I think that's where the pressure comes. It's a good pressure, but it's a good motivator too, to remember like, hey, somebody is watching that cares about something, someone, or some event that's about to take place that they're sitting down to watch or listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, putting into perspective the viewer, I think, is something that makes for a good broadcaster, because I will be in the situation as someone who travels and sometimes will have to watch my favorite team, the Knicks, on other people's broadcasts. Like, certain things will happen where I don't get to hear my broadcasters. And my favorite broadcasters for other teams are people that like respect the team playing, and they respect the game itself, where if I'm listening to them play the Rockets and the Knicks hit a game winner, the Rockets announcers hopefully would still get hype. Now, I know they wouldn't because their broadcasters are horrible, but like, I think the thing I appreciate, they're terrible. They're so bad. And Clyde Drexler can come to my house and I'll get on a step stool to fight him. But like, I think what I always appreciate is when you have someone, and I think the Bulls broadcast does an incredible job of this, like, if another team had an incredible moment, you would not shy away from the excitement. Like, it always sucks when the visiting team does something and the broadcasters are like, and a game-winning shot from whoever. Like, it just ruins the moment, because you are robbing anyone who might be watching that broadcast rooting for the other team of a good experience. And so I appreciate that you are considering everyone watching the game and not just like, well, I'm the Bulls guy, so let's make this a Bulls broadcast. Like, no, this is a Bulls game that also has another team playing. Anyone could be watching this game. A neutral fan could be watching this game.
I love that you and Stacey always give it up. Like, if the Bulls get dunked on, you guys will call it out. Like, you're not shying away from it.
Well, I think that it's a great point, Mike. And again, I don't disparage any broadcast team that may have that point of view, of that style, that like, hey, that's not our team, so we're not, the Homer style. I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. And I do know that there is a swath of fans that do want that. They want that. And I've been criticized by some Bulls fans. I don't think most fans feel that way in Chicago, but there are some fans out there that say, I'd rather have somebody that lives and dies just for us and not for the play on the court. And that's okay. That's not my philosophy. That's not how I grew up, so to speak, in the business. That's not how I approach the job. And I also understand that I came mostly, at least from a television perspective, from a national start. Like, my first major television job was when I was 24. I'll be 39 next month. So I've been doing this for 15 years. Yeah. And when I first started in this business, I was at ESPN, and everything I covered was a national broadcast. You were covering college football and college basketball, volleyball, softball, all these sports. And you were just coming in covering two teams. And I didn't have a rooting interest in anybody that I covered. And it wasn't really until I started doing professional sports on the radio, on national radio, where I was like, oh, I might run into doing a Chicago Bears game or a Chicago Cubs game or a White Sox game or something. And then when I started doing the NBA, it was, national broadcast, even though my first game was a Bulls broadcast for ESPN. I came at this job and this perspective from the national side. So when I got the local job, and I had done minor league baseball many years ago, 15, 16, years ago, doing minor league games on the radio for a team, and you kind of get a sense for how to cover one team. But when you get to this level and you're covering high-level college or high-level professional sports, like, there is a larger fan base that has a greater passion maybe for what's taking place. So when I got the local job and I got the Chicago Bulls job, I didn't want to change my style too much. I wanted to make sure that I respected what was taking place on the court, because that's why I like sports. I think that's why a lot of us, whether we vocalize that or not, whether we can articulate that or not, I think most of us probably like watching sports at a high level, because these are people of the same species who are doing things that we just cannot do physically. I cannot hit a ball 400 feet. I can't dunk. I can't throw a football 60 yards. I can't run the 40 and 4.5 seconds. I can't do those things. But to be able to watch Giannis, who is of the same species as I am, or to watch Victor Wembanyama,
allegedly,
to watch Victor Wembanyama, who is, like we jokingly call him an alien because of just what he can do at the size that he is. Like it's incredible to watch athletes do the things that they do. I remember doing my first NBA game. It was a Bulls Timberwolves game in Chicago for ESPN, and I saw Karl Anthony Towns, who was playing for the Timberwolves at the time, get a pass at midcourt, take 2 strides, and dunk the ball harder than any person I'd ever seen in the, at that point, 6 years of calling high school and college basketball. I was blown away that this person could do this. So from that moment on, I was like, I just want to enjoy the feats of what these athletes can do. And it was the same thing in baseball. It was the same thing in football. There's a romanticism to being a broadcaster that I really do love, because you can kind of romanticize some of the impressive things that people do in the moments that they do it, while a gladiator arena of 20,000 people to 70,000 people are screaming their lungs out. I think there's something to that. And I always wanted to approach the job with that level of respect. And I think for the most part, fans in Chicago, and I certainly think around the NBA, and I think the NBA is a much more national job and national sport than Major League Baseball is. And I hear many local Major League broadcasts that are a little bit more fine-tuned to their area. They're much more provincial and they're much more regionalized. I think the NBA is a truly national and global sport. We have fans for the Bulls from Brazil and Europe and Asia and Africa watching our games. And we have fans, like you said, Mike, of other teams watching on League Pass. Like I watch League Pass. I watch all the broadcast teams. And I appreciate that other fans of other teams, may point out to us or to Bulls fans like, hey, we do appreciate that. We don't need you guys to cheer for us, but we appreciate that your announcers like respect what our players do as well. And I've always taken that philosophy to heart.
Yeah. I think you're talking about covering college games. The first time that I remember being like aware of who you were and being like, who is that guy? This guy's really good. I want to say it was 2018, the back-to-back Arike Ogunbowale game winners in the NCAA women's tournament. So I'm curious, do you have, I don't know, like a top 3, like what are your favorite calls that you've done in basketball games?
In basketball games specifically, I mean, that's one of them. The championship call to win a national title. It's truly something you hope that in a long career you run into, like a moment like that. Yeah. I couldn't believe that we happened to be there for, she hit one with 1 second left to beat UConn.
10 seconds to go for a trip to the national championship. Ogunbowale. Good! 1 second remaining. No timeouts for UConn. Williams down the floor. Samuelson. Notre Dame with the win. Off to the title game.
In the semis, and then hit one at the buzzer to beat Mississippi State 2 nights later.
3 seconds for a national championship or overtime. Ogunbowale for the win. Good! Arike Ogunbowale wins the national championship for Notre Dame.
Those moments that weekend will live with me forever. And it was one of the first times in my career, like I said, which has gone on for, 15, 16 years now at this point.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those times that I finally felt like maybe I knew how to do this, or I felt confident in my ability to do this. We had, I called NBA playoff games for years on ESPN and ESPN radio, and being in Cleveland when LeBron James, who, dominated Toronto. I know that was always a storyline when the Cavs and Raptors played each other in the playoffs. He really had incredible games and incredible moments against Toronto. We were calling a game for ESPN radio, and it was the first playoff buzzer beater, first NBA buzzer beater I ever had the chance to call.
Oh, was that like the running bank shot?
Running bank shot in Cleveland. Just to kind of flipped it on the move, running towards the baseline, hit glass, went down. And I was really proud of the call. I was like, wow, I finally got a chance to call a huge moment in a playoff game. And I felt confident and that was a month after that Arike Ogunbowale play. So it was starting to sink in that I could do this at a higher level. And then for the Bulls, the Josh Giddey play that took place in March of 25.
Elizabeth, I'm coming.
Stacey and I will. I mean, we've had some wonderful times together and wonderful moments, but that may be the defining moment of like our entire tenure together. Is just like one of the coolest things that he has ever seen, that I have ever seen.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed getting a chance to do that game together. Of all the games that we've had a chance to do over the years that we've been broadcast partners, just that moment, and certainly like the viral nature of the moment. It's not because the moment went viral. It's like the aftermath of seeing that, calling it, and then seeing how it spread across the globe, because you had an Australian player, Josh Giddey for the Bulls, hit this incredible shot at the end of what had been maybe the wildest sequence I've ever seen in any game.
Oh, the last 20 seconds of that game was
ever.
Absolutely bonkers.
The Bulls hit 3 threes in the final 12 seconds. Austin Reeves had this great aggressive drive to take the lead with 3 seconds left, and then for Giddey to hit this shot from half court of all places. And for that moment to spread, because again, you have a young star from that's international. It's Bulls and Lakers, two of the most storied franchises, or certainly two of the most popular, if nothing else, around the globe when it comes to basketball. And you have one of the greatest players on the floor in the history of the game, in LeBron James, who's one of the most popular and well-known players that has ever played in the NBA. So for all of those things to be in the same place at the same time, then for the sequence to take place, and then for that to be the capper. And I'm sure Stacey had a little bit to do with it as well, with kind of the viral nature of it, because of his exuberance and his unique nature in reacting to that moment. I think that's one of those things that like it'll just stick with me forever. And whether I don't think about it or not, fans will all I will never have any Bulls fan that saw that will not bring that up to me, because that's just something that everybody collectively remembers.
Here's Reeves. Reeves straight to the cup. Lays it in to take the lead. Bulls are out of timeouts. 2 seconds left. Giddey for the win. Go!
My God! I cannot believe this. Elizabeth, I'm coming, baby. Oh, Lord.
Improbable.
Unbelievable.
Impossible.
Magic Giddey. Good day, mate.
As someone who obviously works a lot of nights and will often DVR games to try to avoid the score, I'm very glad I was watching that one live, because that's I'm at a level of fandom where 12 people texted me when that happened. So I was like, I'm very glad I'm live on this one. But because as I recall it, you were on those back-to-back games in late 21 and early 22 where DeRozan hit those back-to-back shots, but Stacey King was out, right? Or were you on only one of them?
Yeah, Stacey was out for both because he was dealing with COVID, and then I was out for the second one because I was on assignment for football that weekend. So Andy...
you had the Pacers one.
I had the Pacers one. Andy Dimitra called the second one in Washington, but that's the next on the list of basketball calls that I'll always remember is DeRozan on New Year's Eve hitting the three-pointer to win it.
When you have a moment like that, obviously there's a lot of pressure of one of the coolest things that could ever happen happens. Everyone's going to be listening to what I'm saying. Do you in prep for this in the back of your mind have just in case a game winner happens, here's what I'll say? Or are you thinking of anything in the moment as the game is coming down to the wire? Or is this just straight all off the dome improvised stuff? What's the level of prep? Because you can... And I'll make fun of broadcasters so you don't have to. You can go the Michael K route with the Derek Jeter call, which is where the impossible becomes real. Right? The imaginary. It's it's so forced that you're damn it, this sucks. He thought of this a week ago and then wrote it down. It's so much more fun to have something natural. So how do you prep, toe the line? How does that all go down?
I think I've never scripted anything I've said on a call. I could not have scripted that moment. I just there's no shot that I would ever be able to, with everything that was taking place, with how fast everything was going. There is no shot I would ever have been able to script something like that. In a moment like that, when it's so fluid and anything can happen at any second, a lot of that is just reps. Like I mentioned earlier, I've called more basketball than any other sport in my life, just because I called a lot of high school. I called a ton of college hoops. It's just it's the sport that I cover with the longest season. I cover baseball and I do playoff games for Major League Baseball, but during the regular season, I only call maybe 20 games at most, maybe 15 to 20 games, and then you do a playoff series. So it's not the depth of basketball that I'm doing. And now I do, 65 Bulls games along with anything else that pops up, college or other pro games or otherwise. So it's the sport I've called the most. And a lot of this is just based off reps. And I've called a lot of buzzer beaters to be fortunate enough to be courtside when, if you call enough games, you're probably going to run into a few of them. And I've been fortunate to do so. So a lot of that is just off of instinct, off of muscle memory, off of the reps that you've put together over a long period of time. But like when it comes to that baseball game, that 15-inning clincher between Seattle and Detroit, when there's moments and time to think ahead, you always want to be ahead of what's taking place. And I don't script anything in those moments, but you do have to be aware of what's important when you're trying to, especially in one line, caption what has just taken place, especially when there's historic context involved. So,
right, like the Mariners are going to move on to this round of the playoffs they have not done for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually, in my scorecard, I had written down, I do my scorecard on my tablet as well. I had written down really quickly, just 24 years ALCS. This is when the bases were loaded in the bottom of the 15th inning. And again, Seattle being the home team, if they score, it's over. So that's the story. No matter who does it, no matter how it happens. And as the inning starts to build, the bases are loaded for Jorge Polanco. And right before he stepped into the box, we had like a little bit of a, breather, and I wrote down 24 and ALCS. And that's it. Because I just wanted to make sure, if I say nothing else, just call the play and say those two things, because that's going to, at the very least, encapsulate the moment. Now, if I really think about it and go back in my head and go, man, well, I would have loved to make some kind of reference to the fact that it was a 15-inning game, or it was a marathon, or it was an instant classic, which it was. Like, I would have loved to really go back and maybe edit that, but you don't get those opportunities to edit those moments. So to just try to be ahead of what's the most important in that moment is the thing for me. And I think at the end of the day, if there's a Seattle Mariners fan that's been suffering for a quarter century, as I talked to many fans when I was in Seattle who had suffered for a quarter of a century, or their parents had, like that. My dad was a fan of the Mariners, and he passed away 5 years ago. And I'm hoping that this is the night that we can kind of relive something in our family, which of course sticks with me, who, somebody like me who lost his father 7 years ago and had a deep connection with sports with him. Like, that means something to me. That's part of the empathy of the moment. So to be able to make sure you say, first time, in 24 years, they're heading to the American League Championship Series, when Polanco does whatever. He might get hit by the pitch. He might draw a walk. It was a 3-2 pitch that he ended up hitting into right field. Like, it might be a wild pitch that gets away, and I might have to be prepared to call J.P. Crawford running in from third base, and there might be a play at the plate, and it might send it to the 16th, or it might end the series right there. So you can't really script it, because it has to be organic. But I do think being ahead of it to make sure that you punch the things that are most important, most relevant, most pertinent, and most contextual and emotional in that moment, I think are important. So it's not a script, but it is a thought.
I also think one of the hallmarks of a great broadcaster, which you are, and I would have to go back and watch it, but the recognition of, like, I'm going to call what has happened, and then I'm going to just not say anything and let people hear the crowd and let the moment play out before I jump back in. Like, Vin Scully, I think, is the gold standard of baseball broadcasters. Yeah. And when you watch the famous Kirk Gibson play, he calls the play, and then like a full minute goes by where the crowd is just going absolutely bonkers. And then finally, when it gets, quiet enough, he comes out with this perfect, in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. But what makes that moment so special is, like, he had a feel for the moment and knew that, like, the moment was bigger than anything he could say beyond that initial line. Like, you say the important stuff, you let it play out, and then you put a button on it. But I think you do a great job of that as well.
And that's how we grew up, especially calling baseball. Like, we're all students, especially if we're of a certain age. Like, we're all students of Vin Scully. All of us are. And, one of my close friends is Joe Davis, who does the League Championship Series and the World Series, and had one of the most epic World Series to ever call. And he also, replaced Vin Scully as he succeeded Vin as the voice of the Dodgers as well. So he really lives by that. He and I came up in the business together. We both subscribe to that theory and to that mantra. And to that, MO of letting the picture and the crowd tell the story as often as we can. Now, listen, like, for Bulls games, like, Stacey is a different brand of broadcaster who is exuberant, and you cannot contain his emotion, and nor would I ever want to. Like,
no,
now,
we don't want that version of Stacey.
We don't want to do that either. Like, it's not the same. And I think there also has to be a recognition of your partner and who you're working with. And you know, one of my favorite books is To Kill a Mockingbird, and they talk about how killing a mockingbird is a sin because all they do is sing songs and make people happy. And I've always like kind of joked around that Stacey is like a mockingbird in that sense. Like, all he does, his reactions to things, his calls of things, like, they make fans happy. And I would never, especially as somebody who grew up watching the Bulls, and then when I was like a student of broadcasting, was watching him because he was still the broadcaster for the team that I was rooting for. I would never want to take that away from, you know, him or from a Bulls fan. So I always said, my job is to punch the call and then get out of the way for either the picture, the crowd, or Stacey. And then on baseball and on football, but especially on baseball, you know, like when a big moment happens and it's almost formulaic. Like, I think fans are like, oh man, this is so good how he did this, or oh God, why are they talking over this moment? And, you know, why are they more excited for the road team than the home team? And it's like, it's not really what it is. It's the elements around us that are contributing to how we call a moment. Like, if the home team in a baseball playoff game does something big, like a home run gets hit in a big moment, I'm going to punch the call and get out because we have 47,000 extra voices helping us out to contextualize that moment. When the road team does something big and the crowd goes silent, I want to hit the call, maybe give another layer or two for some context. And then I also want to get the stunned silent crowd or the dugout reaction of the road team. And you play to the tools that you have, and the fans and the noise and the pictures are one of those tools. And the road teams, you know, doing something good in the silence of the crowd, that's a tool. And I think those are important pieces to how we broadcast the game with a certain level of emotion. Not every fan understands that, and that's not their job to, but I do think it's a psychological and physiological thing. And it all stems from why Vin Scully was doing it, because he wanted people to appreciate that moment. And when we had our Polanco moment, like, I think we went silent for like 2 minutes almost after that walk-off hit. And then I remember just saying, like, when they finally showed the replay, they will remember this night and this game and that swing in the Pacific Northwest forever, because they will. Because who knows? Like, again, that's the deepest they've gone now in their playoff history. They've, you know, unfortunately for Seattle fans, they still haven't been to a World Series, but those handful of moments are still important to them. So I hope that we encapsulated it, the moment itself, and then the aftermath of it. I hope we encapsulated that with some justice.
No, you guys nailed it. It was great.
Polanco sends it into right and will send Seattle to the American League Championship Series for the first time in 24 years. They will remember this night and this game and that swing in the Pacific Northwest forever.
And I know we're kind of at time here, so I want to be respectful of the fact that you have much to do before tonight's game. But I guess final question I have for you is, you've accomplished a great deal already. What is like the ultimate dream? Is it like, I want to call the Super Bowl, I want to call the NBA Finals? Like, is there one particular thing that would mean more to you than anything else?
I want to be on horse with Mike Schubert and Adam Mamawala.
Well, that's a box that's already been checked. I mean,
now that I've done that, like, what else is there to do at this point? Like,
exactly, yeah. It's all downhill.
Any broadcaster who covers the NFL wants to call the Super Bowl. Any broadcaster that broadcasts games in America, I think, wants to call the Super Bowl. It's just the biggest thing that we have. It's the largest audience. It's like if you grew up in London and you wanted to call the Premier League Championship or the World Cup, like you want to call the thing that means the most to the most amount of people. Like, I would love to have that opportunity one day. Like, and I think anything else beyond that, like, I would love to do the NBA Finals. I've done conference finals, again, on radio. I've done a handful of them. I've done the women's Final Four, so I've done championship level events. I do, a round of the baseball playoffs, so I get a taste of that. So yeah, of course, I would love to maybe get the chance to call a World Series one day or something like that. But I don't want it to be at the expense of anybody else. I hope it comes organically. Yeah. I want it to come when it's supposed to come. I look at somebody like Mike Tirico, who I think a lot of even casual sports fans are pretty familiar with as somebody who called Monday Night Football for years on ESPN and did the NBA, and now has been the voice of Sunday Night Football for the last handful of years and is the Olympics host, and now is covering the NBA again on NBC. I think somebody like him who's in his 50s has worked really, really hard and has been considered one of the best in the industry to do it. And only this February will he call his first Super Bowl, for somebody who's called a ton of football games. And, I think this is very much a marathon, not a sprint. I do think there are a lot of people who get their break relatively early. And I was one of those people who got a pretty early break, but it was at a lower level. Friends of mine, I mentioned Joe, he got a break to be on the World Series earlier than maybe some other people might, but he's also deserving of it, and he worked towards it, and it happened in an organic fashion where Joe Buck left and he stepped in. He was the next guy in line, and he's done a great job with it. So, Mike Breen was the same way. He kind of fell into the NBA Finals because of how the rights issues worked and which network happened to have the rights to the finals. Things are changing so fast in television, and I know any casual fan who tries to find a game that they want to watch is having a lot of trouble with that these days, because there are so many options and so many places to go. Yeah. Like, television rights and sports rights change hands at a very, very fast rate. And you just hope that you're in the right place at the right time. And that when that chance comes, you've done all the prerequisite work to be prepared to call the biggest moment, because you've done it dozens of times in smaller moments or in bigger spots, but not the ultimate spot. Like, that's the goal. So hopefully there's something down the line for me in that regard. But yeah, I would love to call the Super Bowl. And then outside of the kind of the major ones, I love tennis. I would love to call like a Wimbledon or a French Open.
Talking to two tennis boys.
Is that right? Awesome. Awesome. Like,
that's how we met many years ago.
That's great. Yeah. Like, it's just a sport that I bonded over with my father, and he was a huge Pete Sampras guy and eventually a Roger Federer fan. And it was just a sport that I really loved, and I loved the artistry of it. And I love that the broadcasters really let it breathe. You just watch it and observe and react and then contextualize and then watch it like a fan. It's really, really fun.
Love it. Well, we have made it to the plugs. Anything you want to share with people? I know we didn't even get to talk about the fact that you somehow find time to be a DJ, which I don't even know how that's possible amongst everything else that you do. But anything you want to share with the people before we let you go here?
I do have a YouTube channel that I upload stuff to, not frequently enough, but it's just, it's here and there. It's something I get to do on the side, and I get to play in clubs and lounges in Chicago and play a festival once in a while. So that's all on Instagram. That's all on YouTube. But yeah, we're getting ready for a Bulls game tonight. So if you watch League Pass, tune into our broadcast anytime you feel like you want to get some entertainment, hopefully with our buddy Stacey King, and hopefully you watch a good game. And then getting ready for our Packers-Giants game on Sunday. We're welcoming in a new analyst, Drew Brees, who obviously is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when his time comes, I think, next year. So he'll be wearing a gold jacket very, very soon, and we'll welcome him into the Fox Sports NFL broadcasting group. So that'll be on Sunday.
Well, as a Bears fan, go Giants. And Adam, to use one of your calls, you delivered. You absolutely delivered here. Really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for being so gracious and making some time for us. But keep kicking ass, man. You're truly one of the greats right now, and I'm not saying that hyperbolically. You're on top of it.
Really meaningful, guys. I really appreciate that. And thanks for the time. Thanks for the conversation.
Of course, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Horse. Horse is hosted by Adam Amawala and Mike Schubert. This episode was edited by Kensei Suramaki. The music is by Bettina Campomanes. The art is by Allison Wakeman. The music is by Bettina Campomanes. Did I already say that one? I might have. The website is by Kelly Schubert. The social media is by both of the Horse Boys.
Thank you to our producer-level patrons, Polly Bird, Salvatore Testa, Siobhan Ellsbury, Dumko Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Reed. Steph Curry may or may not have asked for Seth Curry to no longer be on the Warriors, but we're not sure. Chase Underulo, Naked Rachel, Sidney Crosby is a vampire, Jelsea's cousin. It sounded like I said Jelsea, but
Jelsea's cousin.
Jelsea, Chelsea's cousin, who might be named Jelsea for all we know. Ginger Spurs Boy, Balls to the Walls, Matsfurli, Utah Jash, and Derry Bird. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Horse Hoops and on Twitter at Horse_Hoops because
Horse Hoops, it was run by Nico Harrison. We got him, folks. We got him.
You know, sometimes it's overdue, and you just have to get rid of a toxic force, much like Horse Hoops and Nico Harrison in this case. You can go to our website, horsehoops.com, for links to the many fun things we talked about today, both in full court press and, of course, with our special guest, Adam Amin.
And if you want to support the Horse Boys, two main ways you can do it. First, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/horsehoops, and you can get access to bonus content, like the live streaming of these video episodes that we do whenever it's not an interview. There's also bonus episodes and bonus text and lots of other fun things. And then you can also go to horsehoops.com/merch. You can get Subnerds basketball shirts, Subnerds basketball wallpapers, ringtones. The Horse theme is your ringtone, a bunch of fun stuff. And that's another great way to support us. But we're going to conclude this episode, as we always do, by putting our hands in the middle and saying something on the count of three. Should we say like a classic Adam Amin line or a Stacey King line to commemorate?
Yeah, I think maybe just if we can do it, when Adam Amin gets into like the upper register vocally, that's like peak Adam Amin. One of his big calls is just saying good, but like in a really fun way. So
I trust your impression of it. So how about 1, 2, 3, and I'll hand it to you to do.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll do my best Adam Amin impression. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Good! DeMar DeRozan delivers!
That's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah.